Hi, I'm Richard Hogan. I'm founder and president of Commuter, and we're here today to talk about the Innovator Series aircraft, which is a new airplane that we're bringing to market. It was originally designed to attract new people into aviation, but yet still provide the performance that will be attractive to experienced pilots and aviators. The Innovator is a three-surface design, which means that it actually has a main wing and a front wing, and then a traditional tail surface that for control. So it's a little unique. No one's really confused it for a Cessna or a Piper aircraft as we've taken it places and shown it. And it is both unique in looks, but also unique in how it flies. We felt like that to bring new people into aviation that we needed a more modern aircraft, one that performed well, one that had incredible safety features and comfort that is not normal in the general aviation field. People have gotten used to having the comfort of their cars, and we wanted to extend that to flying. So we feel like that's one of the areas where we really wanted to excel, because people feel more comfortable going flying, something that's a new experience for a lot of people, if they feel like that the vehicle they're in is substantial. And we didn't want it to just feel substantial, but we wanted to build in the true safety features that make it significantly safer as well. But in any aircraft, if you're going to use an aircraft for some kind of travel or cross-country flying, the performance is very, very important. So we said, well, how do we create an aircraft that meets that need for people to utilize it for transportation, and at the same time be extremely safe for new pilots? So when we designed the Innovator, first and foremost, it has to be a good performing aircraft, and we decided that to really meet the needs of our future customers, it needed to be able to have performance to meet two different primary needs. One is for the new pilot, very good low-speed handling that makes it both safe and easy for someone to learn to fly. And then also need to have the higher performance for long trips, so that you actually can get to your destination, even if it's 700 or 800 miles away, without stopping for fuel. So into what we essentially created what we call a multi-vehicle platform. And to do that, we basically designed the airframe, needed to be light, and needed to have adequate wing area and design so that it can have good low-speed handling characteristics, but also used a unique configuration so that it makes the airplane very efficient in long cross countries. Then in the design, we made it to where we could put different power plants, so that with a smaller aircraft engine, it can fly slow. It's very, very efficient, very low cost to operate, and can meet the category called light sport aviation, which allows you to get your pilot's license in less time than your normal private pilot license. So we wanted to be able to have people start with that type of a configuration. The aircraft has a top speed set up that way is of about 138 miles an hour, but yet it has to be able to land at about 54 miles an hour, or 45 knots, so that it legally meets that low speed handling. And that's pretty slow. So you can set it up that way, or you can put a larger engine in it, and top speed is with the constant speed prop puts the top speed over 200 miles an hour. So it's a good cross-country machine at an average cruise speed of 180 miles an hour. That means that you can comfortably fly 700 miles in 4 hours. We have enough fuel on board so that you can have a reserve of extra 30 or 45 minutes once you reach your destination. And then also with that engine, you've got enough climb performance that even with two people, full fuel, and 100 pounds of bags, you can still climb at well over 1,000 feet a minute and so you can get out of mountainous terrain, or get up and get up to your cruising altitude quicker. So all of the characteristics we think are important when you're going on a long cross-country flight. As we developed the aircraft, and once we knew we had a configuration that met the performance requirements, it was also very important to us to build in exceptional safety. And there were three primary areas that we focused on in doing that. Most aircraft manufacturers today look at other options. One of the options for safety is to put a ballistic parachute in it as a fail-safe in case you get caught in an awkward situation, the airplane's got problems, or you're stuck in weather, then you can actually bring the entire airplane down with a parachute. That's an option. We will have airbags in the aircraft as an option. But we've concentrated on all the normal things that make an aircraft safe from the standpoint of the multi-point harness and good visibility and the general characteristics that you would normally think of to design into an airplane. But we wanted to go further than that, and there are three primary areas. One is in the construction of the aircraft, and to do that, the aircraft is all composite, combination of carbon fiber in some of the structural areas and fiberglass in some of the areas where the structural requirements are not necessarily, but we want to have good radio transmission, and radios like fiberglass a lot better than they do carbon fiber. So we tried to use the appropriate material, but composites offer a tremendous amount of protection of the cockpit area, and that was a lot of the design was a combination of structural considerations for the cockpit area, but also to make it very safe and help protect the pilot in the case that he had an issue. It's also very strong, and so our aircraft can handle a lot of wind loads and turbulence, and is able to handle high structural loads. In addition to that, we looked at the pure physics of safety in an aircraft, and we wanted to build the airplane to where it lands slower, that when you actually do your maneuvers close to the ground, if you're flying slower, you have less inertia and it's just safer, same as it is in the car. If you ever have a problem in your car and you're going 40 miles an hour, you're a lot safer than you are if you're going 70. Same thing applies to an airplane. So this aircraft is designed with the physics of safety in mind. The other issue that we designed into this aircraft is on the aerodynamic side. And we took the things that historically have been safety issues for general aviation and took best practices in how to make the airplane safer. The airplane is resistant to stall spins, and that the three-surface design provided that capability of having the stall spin resistant flight characteristics, and at the same time provide low speed handling. Many straight canard aircraft have to land at high speeds because of the high wing loading on the canard, and ours doesn't have to have that, so it's able to land at slower speeds. So to the greatest degree possible, we really built in those safety features so that a new pilot would feel like that they could come in and train in this aircraft, and it was a much safer aircraft for them to fly. And the other thing is that we tried to really build in a level of comfort and the feel of an interior of a car. Because when people get into an airplane, especially some of the older designs, and it's very narrow and everybody's shoulder to shoulder, and it's noisy, they can hear the outside noise, they don't feel comfortable. This aircraft feels substantial when you're sitting in it. It's 60-inch wide cockpit, so it's about the same width as most sports cars inside. It's a little more reclined position than many other aircraft, but even that we've built in some options. So we can take people up to 300 pounds and 6'8" tall, or down to 6 foot, or down to 5 foot 2 inches tall, and we can adjust both the rudder pedals and the headrest so that their eyes have that same sight picture. They're either boosted up in their seat or kind of reclined so that they have a good view out the windshield and out the side windows. So again, all of those are kind of a combination of safety and comfort features, but we think it makes a big difference in the attracting new pilots who might not be familiar with that. So we really worked on the visibility. We have essentially a sunroof in the airplane so that you can look up and yet have very spacious both side windows and front windows to look out. So while we're talking about the interior of the airplane, another very important part of this aircraft is understand how it's designed from the outside and why it has some of the characteristics that it does. This aircraft is a pusher configuration, so that means that the engine's actually behind the pilot and the passenger, and pushes the aircraft through the air. It has twin booms that go back to the tail configuration, and this combination provides support for the main gear in those booms. It just makes it a very solid aircraft, and it also makes it a quieter aircraft because the engine is behind you and you've got good soundproofing between you and the engine. The aircraft has folding wings, and that's an option, but it's an option that we think most people will take, because with the wings folded, the entire aircraft is under 8 feet wide, so it's easy to trailer, take home, transport, and the other advantage is that even if you keep it at the airport with the wings folded, it takes up less room in a hangar. Now, there have been airplanes for years that had folding wings, but a lot of them are very complicated, and it take anywhere from 10 minutes to 30 minutes to fold the wings, especially if you're going to do that to leave it for storage. But this aircraft's not like that. It's a push-button operation. Basically, you push the button and it releases the latch mechanisms, and the entire folding process is mechanically done. And that allows the wings basically fold over the top of the aircraft over each other, so they're completely out of the way, and they help protect the rest of the aircraft as well. So the total time it takes from the time you push the button is less than 2 minutes. So you push the button, the aircraft folds its wings, you're ready to push it into a garage or a hangar, and we think a lot of people, the cost of hangars in some areas, if you can get them at all, because there's such a shortage in some areas of hangars, can be $250 to $500 a month. And with this, if you can trailer this home and park it, then it'd save you a lot of money over a period of time, $3,000 or more a year in savings just by being able to do that. And even if you keep it at the airport, you park it in a corner of a hangar and you can put 3 or 4 of these aircraft where someone would normally put 1. So it helps lower your cost. So we think that's very important. The aircraft is also is low enough that the tail doesn't stick up too high, and that's part of why you can put it in a garage. Some aircraft, even if you've had the wings folded, you couldn't put it in a garage because it's too tall. So that was an important aspect of the design. So once you look past all the physical characteristics that we think make this a great aircraft, you get down to the flight test, and that's where we've been spending a lot of our time the last few months. We're very close to being complete with what we call Phase 1 flight test of Ship 1. And the first aircraft was mostly hand-built in the shop, and we built in all the characteristics that we felt like were important, and we put a 180 horsepower engine in this one. It has a fixed pitch prop. The airframe is designed to handle higher horsepower, up to well over 200 horsepower. But we felt like this would give us a good, well-rounded performance package that we could do our testing with. And it's turned out to be very good. The aircraft has exceeded 200 miles an hour in level flight. Our rate of climb with this aircraft is over 1,500 feet a minute. So all of the performance numbers that we've had, we've landed and demonstrated takeoffs in less than 800 feet. So we've met all of our primary performance criteria. But the test of an airplane like this goes way beyond the numbers. And one of the most important features of this aircraft is that in one of the early things that we learn when we're flying an airplane is what happens when you stall the airplane. You basically bring the power back to idle, so you're just barely pushing yourself through the air, and you start pulling back on the stick and raising the nose, and the airplane slows down, and the airplane reaches a point where it'll no longer fly, and it drops. And then one of the things that your instructor wants you to understand is that the airplane will start flying again as soon as it picks up some speed. So in this aircraft, you don't do that. What happens is when you pull the stick all the way back and slow the aircraft down, it gets to a point where it won't lift the nose any higher. It won't keep trying to hold level flight. It'll just gradually start descending. And that descent is 700 to 1,000 feet a minute, depending on how the aircraft's set up, which is much, much slower descent rate than a ballistic parachute or some of the other safety features that other planes have. So it's a huge margin of safety. The most important thing about that aspect, though, is that in an aircraft, one of the most dangerous things that can happen in an aircraft is to enter a spin. And that's especially dangerous at low altitude because it's hard to recover. This aircraft is spin resistant. You can enter that stall type configuration and it doesn't stall. And since it won't stall and you have full authority to turn the aircraft and control it in basically its flying, it's just not holding altitude anymore, you can't enter a spin under normal conditions. And so you can't get yourself into trouble. And that generally, historically, has happened when you're coming in to land an aircraft. And it's one of the few dangerous areas in flying is when an aircraft actually enters a spin. So we feel like we've added a huge margin of safety by building that in. And through the testing, we've tested over and over and over that flight characteristic to be sure that we are doing that. And we're going to continue to test that. But if our technology continues to provide this level of safety in the stall spin area, we think that it's a tremendous safety feature, especially for new pilots. And so let's talk a little bit about a couple of unique features on Ship 1, our first test aircraft of this design. The first is that since it's a test aircraft, we built it intentionally pretty heavy. So it's in our normal flight test now, we're testing the aircraft about 400 pounds, 400 to 500 pounds heavier than the normal aircraft will be in production flight. And we wanted to reach out to the outer edge of that envelope and make sure that even when the airplane was overloaded, that it handled these stall characteristics, that it still had, that it was well behaved in landings, and that it didn't have any bad characteristics. And we have been very happy with the performance. The test performance at those higher weights is still basically as good as we had published as far as what our target performance was. We thought it would handle that it would outperform what we were putting those numbers. We wanted to be conservative, and even with the higher weight, it is exceeding that performance. So that was very rewarding. The other unique thing about this particular aircraft is that we did not install flaps in this particular airplane. And that's partly because of the configuration, but the other is that because of the way that the wings are designed, as you slow down, the aircraft starts producing more drag. So essentially when you come in to land, as you raise the nose and slow down, it will continue to slow down and be able to make a fairly steep approach into a short airfield. We will have speed brakes and some other features in production, but we've proven that this design doesn't need it. One of the really unique aspects of this that we were really even surprised at, our initial projections showed that this aircraft would have a very good glide ratio. And by that, the way that's normally calculated is how far will it go forward for however much it drops. So if the airplane is in a glide and it drops 100 feet, how many hundreds of feet will it go forward? And that ratio, a good glide ratio for a general aviation airplane is really 8 to 1 or better. Our projections showed that this would be over 10 to 1, but repeatedly we've tested at closer to 13 to 1. That's no means comparable to a sailplane, which can, gliders can be much higher than that. But for a general aviation aircraft, that's considerably more. It also happens at a higher speed. So the best glide speed on this aircraft is over 100 miles an hour. And it's again partly because of this unique wing design that we have, this low aspect ratio wing. But at higher speeds, it's very efficient. So it's very low drag, because it has a low frontal area. And what that means is that if you had an engine problem or you had fuel problems of any kind, that we can reach airports that would be beyond the glide ratio of a lot of other airplanes. So we can actually, it becomes a safety feature. We knew it was going to be good, but we didn't know it would be as good as it is. So we've established a little about the airplane, but let's also talk about how someone would get one of these airplanes. We're used to a world where when we want to buy something, we go to a dealer, we find the make and model and the color that we want, and we do the paperwork and we buy an airplane or buy a car. In this case, this works a little differently. In this aircraft, this is an experimental aircraft. That's how we'll be bringing it to market initially. So a person sits down with us and designs how they want to build this airplane, and they are the actual builder. This program has existed in a lot of different forms for many years, 60 years that I know of, that in this country people have been building airplanes, and it certainly saves them a lot of money, and they can build an airplane that's pretty incredible if they are willing to take the time to do it. But historically, it's taken 7 years on an average to build an airplane in someone's garage. In this case, you come to our factory and build it in our tooling, and using our jigs and our methodology, the airplane can be built in a little over 2 weeks as far as the actual basic airplane. You still have to put the engine, the instruments, and interior and get it painted. So we're really still, it's a couple of month process to get the aircraft of your dreams. But that's truly what you're building. And the satisfaction of being able to build your own airplane and build it the way that you want it is tremendous. So there are actually more home-built or kit-built aircraft produced every year than all of the production aircraft combined. And it's become a very popular way for people to create airplanes. But the problem is it generally takes a long time. And that was a major issue where we were concerned. The nice thing about a composite aircraft is that you have a greatly reduced part count. So there's not as many parts to put together. But we've taken that a step further in that where in the past a lot of composite construction meant doing a lot of fiberglass work and taping a lot of parts, and then a great deal of body work to get it ready. We've worked very hard to improve the level of the finish work to where it eliminates a lot of that finish work. The other thing that happens is that you're not really fabricating this airplane, you're assembling this airplane. So once you put all the parts together and put the proper adhesives, you put the proper clamping pressure on them, and you let them cure, and then so you're basically assembling it much like the plastic models that many of us built as kids. But it makes a very, very strong and durable airframe. Then you take that one additional step further, and as long as you go with one of the engine options and instrument options that we've designed into it, then you can actually install the engine or the instruments in a matter of a week or two, as opposed to many weeks or many months, which is typical for a home builder. So it greatly cuts down this time. When someone comes to our plant to build one of these, we also will take them to the airport and do a considerable amount of transition training because we want them to feel comfortable in the airplane. So by the time that they've got the aircraft built, they are very qualified to fly it. They already have a lot of time in the type. So we've really worked on the support side. And again, that's important. Historically, the people who built airplanes were aviators, people that had been interested in this for years and years and helped other people build an airplane. That's no longer really necessary. We wanted people to be able to come in and build this airplane without experience. And everyone that comes to the plant has an assigned mentor that works with them through the process. And the amount of money that you save just by not having it take years to build an airplane is pretty significant. So it's actually a cheaper way to go. The other thing we're excited about is that it gets a lot of airplanes flying in a relatively short period of time. So the fleet will grow quickly. Whereas for many years, a new aircraft would come out and it would be years before you actually saw them flying around. We'll have several airplanes flying the first year that are customer aircraft. When you do that and you actually decide that you're going to build an aircraft, the first thing you have to figure out is what you're going to use this aircraft for. And if it is truly your first aircraft and you want to design it to meet LSA or the light sport requirements, we'll help you through that process to make the proper choices of engine and instruments and other accessories so that you truly have a good performing light sport aircraft. If on the other hand you're an experienced pilot, you're planning on using this for long cross countries, then we'll make sure that we have an engine that matches the profile of what you want for those cross countries. And if it means that you need extended tanks, we'll help you make the choices so that the airplane performs as you want. Then it's a matter of picking out your interior and your paint scheme and some of those types of things, and we'll be able to provide support for you on that basis as well. So as we've started developing the program for people to build these aircraft, one of the things that we felt like was very important is to go through a process to develop this to a very high level. And we call that the Alpha and Beta program. So as we have gone through testing and we're setting up to build the first production units of this, we've selected what we call alpha builders, builders who are experienced builders that have built several aircraft before, that are going to come in and build the first 6 aircraft in cooperation with our factory people, and look for the opportunities to streamline the process and make the process and the tooling even better. And we think that this is an important phase. It's a development type phase, but it's normally not something that people do. They find out that they could have made improvements after the fact. We want to find all of those opportunities before we get into general production. After we've been through the alpha program, then we'll go into a beta program. We're going to have a select group of 12 beta builders who are not as experienced, but they're people that have good general aviation knowledge and are aviation enthusiasts. But they're going to be building the aircraft by our instructions with our tooling. And that way we have the opportunity for someone to say, gee, I'm not familiar with this term. And so we can make our program even better so that by the time we get into general production, we have a very refined process. Since we are doing a certain amount of trailblazing on this system to help people build this in our plant, we want to make sure that we refine it to a very high level and that we can provide for people to go through without a lot of questions. To do that, as we have developed these programs, we're also going to have an online essentially group that people can log into and get comments from the other builders and things that, have a forum basically for people to share their experience of how they built their aircraft and things that they've done that they feel like was important for them, and things they learned as they went through the process. So this level of support in many kit companies, one of the things that they have to spend a lot of time with is customer support, because if someone's building an aircraft at home, there's so many questions that come up. But as we go through the alpha and the beta program, we will have defined what most of those questions are, and then because it'll be being done in our facility, it's going to make that learning curve a much shorter one. If someone wants to go ahead and get started on the program, one of the first parts of that process is really to take and go through what we're calling the aircraft selection guide and answer some basic questions about how you anticipate flying with the aircraft. Whether you're going to be your wife is going to fly with you, or you're going to travel long distances, and that way we can make sure that to help you configure the aircraft for your needs. So we think that's a good part of the process. And at this point, we're beginning to take reservations for the people who want to build this in general production. We're about a year away from general production, so if someone is reserving a manufacturing position, that's exactly what they're doing. When we get through the alpha and beta program, then we'll start into the general building process. And that'll be summer basically of 2017 before we actually start doing that. The alpha and the beta program, although we have several applicants, we have not selected all of the people that are going into those programs. So if you feel like that you might fit the bill and would like to be one of the early builders of these, either you're an experienced builder and you've built several aircraft and you'd like the opportunity to be an alpha builder, we'd love to talk to you. We've actually had a lot of people send us their resumes and pictures of the aircraft they've built, because it's important to us that we have the right group of people. The beta builders, again, we want to be somewhat careful about who we have come be a beta builder, because we want the people that would ask the right questions, and we want a cross-section of people from different experiences to do that. And we're going to have about 12 beta aircraft built. The unique thing about this is that in both cases, we feel very strongly that we want the people that represent the company to have experience with the aircraft, and we think there's no greater way to do that than to be one of the early builders. So if you have an interest in being a part of an organization like this, and you have an interest in building one of the first aircraft, we'd certainly like to talk to you, because out of the alpha and beta program, we will be asking people if they would like the opportunity to represent the company, because it's very important to us that we don't have salesmen as much as we have mentors. Someone's going to build an aircraft and they're going to be flying this aircraft. They're going to become part of the family, and we want them to be learning from someone who has been down this path before, and that's the approach that we're going to be using to structuring the company. So give us a call if you're interested in being one of the first builders of this. We've talked an awful lot about the unique Innovator series, and as we've shown this to aviators, there have been a lot of questions about, are you going to build a bigger model, or are you going to build one with different engine configurations? And there's been a lot of speculation about some of the different configurations and different types of aircraft that can be built off of this basic platform. And the reality is that there are a lot of opportunities to build aircraft using this three-surface design, where it will do things that, frankly, a lot of the other normal configurations don't do as well. So yes, there's a great deal of that in development. Our focus at this point has been on creating the Innovator series, which is the two-place version of this, and refining it to a very high degree. But when someone asks about some of these other configurations, they are on the drafting table. And we will have a larger aircraft with 4 to 6 seats in the future. But we just don't want to be, we think that by really developing this to a very high degree, that as we start those other projects, we'll be doing it with even more knowledge and capability as we make more complex aircraft. So when you hear rumors, they're all true. Maybe not all true, but most of them are. It's an exciting time for us because we really are opening the door to some possibilities that we think are exceptional.